For fuck's sake, for fuck's sake. What we gonna do, what we gonna do? For fuck's sake, for fuck's sake. The world's gone mad and I'm sharing it with you. For fuck's sake, for fuck's sake. So sit right down, grab a glass of wine, maybe a cup of tea and some chocolates, and join me for another For fuck's sake.
Welcome to FFS with me, Judith Owen. I'm joined for the second week by my darling friend and most incredible artist, Dawn DeDeaux, here in the New Orleans Museum of Art, where she's having the most incredible retrospective. We finished last week talking about her Katrina pieces, but now I'd like to talk about the things that you did before that, because this is an area that I was unaware of, because, you know, I didn't know you then, and I was taken aback by how moving and powerful. I noticed the new sign which says, "There is nudity and violence." She sounds like Quentin Tarantino. It's not it at all. It's just like, what?
When I saw that sign, I said, I've arrived.
You have arrived. You're
arrived.
a grown-up. I'm sorry. You swear that somebody was like pulling out guns and it was just like, where? No, it's not. It's not at all. This is ridiculous. Anyway. You have to be so careful these days. But what she's referring to, or what they're referring to, is, I think, a particular part. There is nudity, but this piece, The Face of God, and we were just having a conversation because I was like, where did this come from? And of course, it all makes sense. It comes from Tennessee Williams. Would you please explain this to my wonderful viewers around the world?
I shall. Thank you. Face of God, In Search Of, comes out of Tennessee Williams' play Suddenly last summer, where the protagonist, Sebastian, a man of means, travels the world each year in search of the face of God. And why? He says, only when he sees the face of God can he write his one great poem. So there are other parts of the book, but I'll stay on point with Face of God, the title. So Sebastian ends up on an Encantadas beach, and he's watching the hatching of the baby sea turtles, and they're running all over, and there's the slaughter, the birds, the iguanas, the crabs. Everybody comes out for the big feast, Thanksgiving there on the island. And anyway, at the end, here's Sebastian standing on a bloody beach. Tennessee Williams never understates. And he screams, "I have last seen the face of God." So I saw this.
Was being ravaged by the boys who he's been basically having like, homosexual trysts with, and giving them money because they're so poor, and that's what it was. And they then feast, literally.
They cannibalize him.
Cannibalize him because they're so resentful and angry at what he's been, as in paying them for their services, as it were.
Yeah, so in some, right, the play is about consumption.
Oh, yeah.
And desire and, the nature of consumption. So I had trouble as a young child when I first saw this, maybe at 13 or 14 years old. I had just lost a sister, ravaged by cancer, just watched her evaporate on a little bed like that. And so I'm scratching my head when I see the film version of Tennessee Williams Suddenly last summer. And I'm saying, well, God, if he's going to find God in consumption, he doesn't have to leave his bedroom, because we're born and we're consumed in a way. And I just thought it was not where I wanted to find God. I do my own non-verbal yet visually narrative interpretation of Tennessee's play, and I put, the plight of the turtle is central. Our role as predator of the turtle kind of makes its way into the film, but most importantly, at the end, I counter Williams, I counter Sebastian, and offer my Face of God, and it's an X-ray of the cello. A cello playing, and I say art for me, and particularly music. I'm not a musician. She is. But I do think music is the highest of the arts because it can reach the hearts of so many who speak so many different languages, different races, different ages. Music just goes right to us. It is the universal language.
My sister was obsessed with Jacqueline Dupre. She played cello when we were growing up. There is nothing else like the sound of a cello. It is extraordinary. And of course you would choose that. But now I didn't know about your sister. This is heartbreaking and fascinating to me, because I was looking at that little bed, feeling disturbed and not knowing why. Because it looks like, is it a child's bed? Is it a hospital bed? What is it? But now you've completed the picture.
It's both. I hope it starts out I build it up in 5 suites, and so there's this kind of moonlight hitting the bed, and the surf sounds and the waves roll in, and it's somewhat benevolent. The mother turtles crawl out the sea, they lay their eggs, there's boom, 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 coordinated with the cello, boom, boom, boom. Little eggs being laid on the bed, right? And then it takes on when we get to when these eggs finally hatch, that's where I got the violent sign. So the eggs hatch and they run across the sheets of the bed, place of birth and conception.
Of course.
So they scramble across the sheets, and then all of a sudden the predators, and this is kind of the red suite, the blood. And so there's that's where the feasting takes place. And then it moves into our own consumption. We are also consumed turtle. And so there's how we do it. There's a big sledgehammer, the way we kill the turtle and eat the turtle. But then you get beyond that kind of level of consumption and get to that issue with my sister and with all of us, and I was doing this at the onset of AIDS too. So there is this moment where I blacken the screens and just focus on the bed, and this is the transformation of the bed into a place of death. And I have cancer cells kind of spinning like a kaleidoscope on the sheets of the bed, and then the room transforms into a white sterile room, because in the end, if nature is that close to our end, we scramble into a place that shuts nature out. So it becomes then in the end this hospital room. There was a touch of fear in me because I don't go that autobiographical, and so to really to try to fuse some of my personal experiences with the play. We're also a city of hedonists. I'm one. I love to overeat.
I love that about you. You're the only person, can I just digress very quickly? Whenever we go over to Camp Abundance, which is the fabulous living art piece that is Dawn's home, and she'll say things like, oh, it's just going to be a picnic. It's just going to be just like a small, nothing, it's just going to be like a packed lunch. Or she uses these kind of metaphors for what is in fact a feast. And I feel like such a loser every time I go to Dawn's house, because it's like, you're a brilliant artist, you are living art, and you cook like a fiend. I mean, a spread, a smorgasbord, a Babette's feast. And
Well, thanks for the kudos.
It's true.
No, I think feasting
is important.
Is so important.
Another piece that I didn't know and saw here, which is extraordinary, are the doors. Oh. The doors. That's a prison piece, isn't it?
Well, behind those doors, there are 6 doors in the exhibition. Decorative security bars on domestic doors, and they were shot mostly in 1989 when New Orleans was murder capital of the world, and we had the highest death rate, but also highest incarceration work that wasn't working. And it just became this blur, like, well, who's really in jail? Who's in jail? We're all in this jail, and we have to work together to get ourselves out of this. It's not just a simple case of put some of the people over here and some of us over here, and when you look right and left, everybody is behind a bar, the doors kind of were the facades of those kind of stories, and the motion detector lights, and inside one of the room you would see everybody in the exhibition. It was surveillance. So
How big was that originally, that piece?
6,000 square feet.
Oh my good grief.
No, it was huge. It was huge.
I am quite the Hemingway fan. And the piece we saw a stretcher, and I said, God, that looks like a First World War stretcher. And you said, yes, that's part of the Hemingway, the whole Hunter piece.
So I put Hemingway, and to symbolize the origin of the male myth, I put him in this cave-like setting with a World War I stretcher and a pile of elephant bones. So the stretcher, why the stretcher? I say that, you know, he had bad eyesight. He couldn't really be enlisted as a full soldier. His father, we'll get to in a minute if you have time, pushed him into joining, and he wanted to serve, so he was part of an ambulance crew, and he was delivering chocolates to the Italian soldiers, and he was shot and had to be carried away.
Huge brain trauma, the first of many.
Yeah, and was carried away on a World War I stretcher. And while he was there at the front, he was also a correspondent, he was writing articles for his hometown newspaper. And that was kind of the first moment of myth, because in his account, he said he was wounded at the front line. He didn't say giving out chocolates. It was as though he, you know, he was a soldier. It was kind of embellished. And you know, and I think he kept trying to make his daddy proud. And in fact, he was more of a mama's boy. And this kind of keep blowing up the balloon, and pop.
Yeah. In here, in this retrospective, you have this gorgeous, to go backwards, found instruments from Katrina, which I loved, inside, it's inside a snare drum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or a tom or a snare drum, and they're all these brass instruments, horns, and in the background, coming out of them, you're hearing Terence Blanchard's music.
Well, in last week's segment, we spoke of Katrina, impact on my work, and I talked about kind of going through the glass, that moment of that relationship to the destruction. Well, in the streets of New Orleans after Katrina, when the water started receding, I was walking around endlessly, and I kept catching this kind of little brass tip of something here and there. So I pulled those instruments, and they were damaged and broken, and I didn't give them to anyone. I kept the damaged instruments and made art out of them. And it is that the sound will bubble back up to the top, right? It is the phoenix.
It is.
It's the phoenix, and the music will come back another day.
Yeah. Now we come back to me, it's like the most exciting thing, and it's not part of the retrospective in so much of it's the latest piece.
So there's this damaged statue I found. I think it was a Mary. It looks like the arms are indicated, but the baby's gone. So it's a mother who has lost her child, mother who has lost her earth, kind of Mother Earth. Anyway, I found this statue, and even though it exceeded my earlier mandates that souvenirs had to fit within one's hand, I said, no, she made it. When the asteroid hit Earth and everything was torched, all of our museums, all of our temples, all of our graves mingled into one thing. When that happened, somehow this statue got thrown into outer space in a post-human, and then she lives in this post-human world.
Orbiting. She's up there, orbiting. She's up there.
She's her own kind of asteroidal body.
I am fascinated by how this is a remarkable video piece, an installation, but how did you, you see the planets close up, you see her going through space. How did you do that? It's really something.
A lot of talented people on my team, and I storyboarded. I've had this this kind of in my system, a vision of what it would be for 3 or 4 years now. Importantly, the real object is kind of in the room too as an artifact. So I think that foreground.
No, that's what I love about it. She stands there, she is. You can see her, you can touch her, or you wouldn't touch her. You know what I mean? She's there, and yet you can see this life that she has.
So it's just a what if scenario. And we are called Mother Earth, right? So when I saw the statue, I said, well, that's an apt object to trace our humanity.
I love it. And it again, there's something profoundly moving, worrying, and beautiful about it, which is what I love. I mean, I love it all.
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
Because
thanks to the whole tout ensemble.
The tout ensemble, indeed. What's next for Madame DeDeaux, do we think?
Well, I need some sleep treatment. I need sleep treatment, swimming, and I'm ready to get back. I'll get back to work soon. I still have to restore. Everything is always framed in disaster, so I do have to fix my.
Aren't you the woman whose every single roof came off?
Yeah,
in
I've
Ida?
got two of the four are restored. Now you have to go fix your.
I have to go fix mine too.
Glass
But you
ballroom.
also have more columns coming up in
Oh,
the city.
yeah, in
You
front of
have
the
that too.
Superdome.
In front of the Superdome, there will be how many columns?
70 columns in front of Caesar's Palace Superdome in a free fall bearing Milton's Paradise Lost in highway reflective vinyl. So the cars that go up and down the corridor will see Milton really make darkness visible. That was his.
Listen, that's what I love. Again, that is literally the summation. Paradise Lost if we're not really careful. But thank you again so much. It's been incredible.
Judith Owen, it's been a pleasure.
I love her so much.
I love her.
This has
What a great woman
my
and
God.
talent. And I'm so honored to have done this. Thank
This is
you.
my pleasure. And I want to thank you all for spending a little bit of Sunday with us. This has been, for feck's sake, with me, your hostess with the mostest love, as I said before, for the fabulous Dawn DeDeaux. She's a marvel, and I'm so glad to be in this city to be able to have people like her
Boy,
in my
you're going to
life.
get a good dinner now.
Oh, a feast! Do you hear?
Another feast.
I'll see you all next Sunday. Thank you so much. Here is the sublime Pedro Segundo to finish up the show. Dawn, you had him do what he does best, of course, which is to basically orchestrate on drums, on everything, on every single...
Didn't I turn that off?
Oh, I love that.
Oh, and look who it is, Lynn
Oh,
Fishback.
it's Lynn Fishback. It's
Okay.
all part of it. It's how you
We'll
know
leave
this
it
is
in.
real. Yeah, we'll leave it in.
Leave it in.
It's all good.
Okay.
So